there is a difference between emotions and feelings. We're making a discernment there. We've decided that it's important for you to recognize that there are two different things occurring, and it's important for you to see that very, very frequently they're all mixed up together, like one of these ice creams, you know, when you get the chocolate and the vanilla and they swirl together. The issue at hand is that emotions are typically habit-based, culturally based, past and future based. They are not the same as what we're going to identify feelings. Feelings are based on what's actually going on in the moment. So we recognize that you have an emotive response to a situation. What we want to help you with is recognizing when that emotive response is a habit and when it's actually a reflection of the truth of the moment. Now, we know we've talked about the math problem example before, and we know we've given you many, many options about being in the moment. But a lot of that discussion is very intellectual, and it doesn't actually acknowledge what goes on within you when you're presented with an experience that draws out an emotive response in you. So as you have an experience, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to ask, why am I feeling this way? To be acknowledging the feeling you're having may not actually be representative of what's going on in the moment. Is going to be an incredible amount of freedom for you. Because as you experience yourself having feelings rather than emotions, you're going to actually have a conscious experience of the dynamic you find yourself in. Emotions very frequently draw you out of the moment, where feelings are going to deepen your experience of the moment. An emotion tells you you need to be jealous or fearful or envious or confused or depressed. Lots of those kinds of generalized emotions. You've all felt them. A feeling, on the other hand, gives you the opportunity to actually be present and reflect upon what's going on. It's a bit like the tool Who Answers the Door, but instead of it being an intellectual exercise, it's an emotion exercise, emotive exercise. It's hard because you always say emotions or feelings. There's not really a third term that encompasses the fact that you're having an emotional response, so we're trying to make up some different language here. Well, we might have to work on the terms a bit, but basically we think they work all right. Is if you say, how am I feeling, and you don't settle for an emotion. Eloheim has said to you many times that they're not impressed with emotions, that they're not romantic in that way. And what they're really meaning by that is typically your emotional states are habits. They're habits, they're patterns, they're culturally driven. Something occurs and you have an emotion that's already pre-programmed to assign to that situation. And if it's not assigned to you by your society, it's assigned to you by your family of origin, or it's assigned to you by your role, or it's assigned to you by habit or things that have happened to you in the past, or projections that have happened of things that could happen in the future. So a lot of times you'll be in a situation and the dynamic will draw you out of you. Draw you out of you. Your feelings are an accurate representation of what's going on. Your emotions will draw you out of the accuracy of the moment through habit mostly. So sometimes you just say, God, I just feel sad, or God, I just feel angry, and I don't even know why. And a lot of times it's because you're being triggered into an emotive state and you're going habitually into the rut of whatever pattern you're most accustomed to, instead of addressing what's actually going on. Now, there's a strong pull from the body to go along that rut, just like being unconscious, and we've talked about that a lot too. The idea that there's this ditch that you've been digging in, it's much easier to keep digging that ditch than it is to start a new one. But if you keep digging the ditch, the scenery never changes, and that means life never changes. So when you're in an emotional response to a situation, you have to make the choice to say, even though it's very, very compelling to be sad, mad, whatever, I want to actually reflect upon what's actually happening here. And the body's going to make a demand on you to not change, but you've had a lot of practice with dealing with the demand of the body to not change. So we trust in your ability to say, hang on, hang on, hang on. And you know the feeling of don't change. So you can invest in, okay, that's just a red flag now. That don't change feeling is a red flag to indicate to me that something important is going on here. There's an opportunity for growth. There's a chance here for me to know myself more. Now, for you women, a lot of times this brings up the woman sitting by the campfire, and we're going to remind you of what that's about. The idea of the woman sitting by the campfire is this idea that back and back and back in your DNA is programmed the idea that if your man brings his hunting proceeds is not the right word, but the efforts of his hunting back to somebody else's campfire, you and your kids might starve. So you're heavily invested in him coming back to your campfire all the time. So you sit around the campfire going, I hope he comes back. What if he doesn't? That one down there, she's just a campfire hussy with her low-cut campfire hussy clothes or whatever you got going on, right? It's like it's got the she's got the one-shoulder campfire hussy clothes going on or something. So you have this intensity around, I have to be jealous. I have to be envious. I have to negotiate my position. I have to look at other people and keep an eye on what they're doing. And a lot of that is still in your DNA. And so that survival instinct kind of behavior for those of you who are women at this time can be really intense. Really, really, really intense for you. And this whole emotional response tends to go along with that a lot of times. And maybe it's true for men too, of course, because we work with Veronica. Sometimes it's easier for us to understand the feminine perspective on things. But there's a lot of that, if I don't protect what's mine, I'm going to lose. And so that emotion of protect what's mine is very, very easy to access. So when something happens, it's super, super easy to go into protect what's mine instead of what's actually happening. And you can make assumptions about what's happening based on the idea that you're automatically going into protect what's mine rather than analyzing what's really happening. Or someone's criticizing me, and you just assume they're criticizing you, and you get defensive instead of actually listening to what they're saying and hearing if they're actually criticizing you or if they're just sharing something and you're taking it as a criticism. I feel criticized. I'm defensive. I'm angry. I'm sad. You automatically go into those emotions instead of asking, what's really going on? What am I feeling here? And what's interesting is when you go deeply into the feeling, on one hand, you could have the woman by the campfire who goes into jealousy, lack, rage even. On the other hand, it could be compassion. Right? If your man, in whatever capacity it looks like in 2010, your man goes to the next campfire, you could look at him and recognize, wow, old widow woman down the street really needed his help in this moment. And I'm actually tempted to be jealous that he's helping her, fix her screen door. Instead of looking at him and saying, I'm partnered with a man who's generous with his time and his abilities and who cares for other people. But the temptation is jealousy, right? The temptation is this, oh God, I have to protect, instead of actually letting yourself feel in the moment. And if you don't let yourself believe that you have to protect the future and instead examine the moment, we think more often you'll find yourself in positions of gratitude, ease, and more of a relaxed state because you're not protecting or projecting the future. You're allowing the moment to reveal itself. And when the moment reveals itself, your depth of feeling is very, very profound. And of course, if you're in the moment, you also have access to your soul's insight. So you're also getting a twofer because you're letting yourself have the depth of feeling and you're allowing your soul to access the depth of feeling. So not only do you have depth of feeling, but you have soul's insight on top of it. We think this will be powerful for you, and we hope that our explanation illuminated it clearly.